We live in the most connected age in human history. With a tap, we can send our thoughts across continents, video chat with strangers, or receive hearts and likes from people we've never met. Our feeds are filled with smiling faces, life updates, and filtered glimpses into curated realities. It seems like connection is everywhere, constant, immediate, and endless. And yet, loneliness is quietly becoming one of the greatest epidemics of our time. You might know the feeling. The moment the screen goes black, the moment the laughter fades and the silence creeps in. It isn't just emptiness, it's a gnawing hollowness, like something essential is missing. It's not merely sadness, it's deeper, heavier. It's loneliness, a state that doesn't just affect your heart, it begins to weigh down your soul. Society treats loneliness as a disease, a sign of failure, of being unwanted, unworthy, or broken. We're taught to fear being alone, to run from it, to drown it out with noise, distractions, and constant contact. But what if this narrative is incomplete? What if loneliness isn't a curse, but a clue? The Stoics, those ancient warriors of the mind, offered a radically different way to see this pain. While others fled from solitude, they leaned into it. They didn't view loneliness as something to be cured. They saw it as something to be learned from, an experience that stripped away illusion and revealed the raw truth of who we really are. They believed that isolation wasn't something to escape, but a forge, a sacred space where strength, clarity, and wisdom could be born. That being alone wasn't the same as being lost. In fact, it was often the beginning of being found. What if I told you that loneliness isn't a sign that something is wrong, but a signal that something deeper is calling out to be awakened? That beneath the discomfort lies a hidden reservoir of power most people never tap into. The Stoics understood something that modern society is just beginning to rediscover. Solitude isn't just a phase, it's a crucible, a place where the soul is tempered and truth becomes undeniable. In the steps that follow, we'll explore what they knew and how you can use their wisdom to transform loneliness from a wound into a source of unshakable strength. Step 1. Loneliness is a mirror, not a monster. Loneliness. Even the word carries a quiet sting. It echoes like an empty hallway, a cold wind brushing the soul. For many, it's something to run from, something dark, something wrong. Society teaches us that if you're alone, you're failing. If you're not surrounded by friends, family, attention, admiration, then something must be missing. Or worse, you must be missing something. But what if we've misunderstood loneliness all along? The Stoics, those rugged, clear-eyed philosophers of antiquity, refused to accept such shallow narratives. Where others saw fear, they saw an opportunity. Where others saw weakness, they saw a test. And where others saw loneliness as punishment, they saw it as a mirror. Because here's the truth, loneliness doesn't create your discomfort, it reveals it. When we're alone, there's no one to impress, no one to perform for. The roles we've stitched into our daily lives, the helper, the joker, the achiever, the one who has it all, together fall away like worn-out costumes. And what's left? Just you. Not the version of you that shows up at dinner parties, in meetings, or on Instagram. The real you. The self you avoid by filling every spare moment with noise, with scrolling, with distractions, with busyness disguised as importance. The self that emerges when no one's looking. That's what loneliness shows you. And for many, that revelation is terrifying. Because what if you don't like what you see? What if beneath all the activity, there's restlessness? What if beneath all the social masks, there's confusion, fear, or emptiness? That's why we run. That's why we label loneliness as bad or depressing. But the Stoics would stop us right there. Epictetus, once born a slave, later a teacher of emperors, told his students, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Why? Because the path to truth begins in humility. In accepting that we are not yet who we wish to be, but that we can become it. And solitude is where that transformation begins. The Stoics believed that discomfort is not the enemy, it is the signal. They understood that the moments we feel most alone are often the moments when reality is finally trying to speak to us. But we are so practiced at silencing it, we miss the message. Here's the secret. Loneliness is not a monster waiting to consume you. It is a mirror waiting to show you. Show you what you cling to, show you what you avoid, show you what you need to confront to grow stronger, braver, clearer. You see, solitude is not the same as despair. Despair says, I am alone and always will be. Solitude says, I am alone right now, and this moment is sacred. The Stoics taught that the person who cannot be alone is not yet free, because if your peace depends on other people's presence or praise, then your peace is fragile. It can be taken from you at any moment. But if you can sit in a room alone and be whole, still, and self-contained, then nothing can truly harm you. Then you are free. Think of Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, writing his meditations in the dead of night, alone with his thoughts, wrestling with the weight of ruling the world and the deeper weight of ruling himself. Think of Seneca, retreating from the noise of Rome, not to escape life, but to clarify it, to reflect, to simplify, to see. When you are alone, the illusion fades, and that's a good thing. Because once you can see clearly, you can begin to choose differently. You can choose stillness over stimulation. You can choose values over validation. You can choose depth over distraction. This is the first lesson of loneliness. It is not a sentence. It is a summons. A call to meet yourself. To see without flinching who you are when no one else is watching. And that is not something to fear. That is something to revere. Because from that place, from that mirror, true transformation begins. Loneliness is clarity in disguise, and clarity is the birthplace of unshakable strength. Step 2. External company is no substitute for inner peace. We live in an age of endless interaction. Never before has it been so easy to be in touch with others. A swipe, a like, a message. Connection is instant. Notifications pour in like rainfall, each ping promising some validation, some acknowledgement, some thread of relevance in the lives of others. And yet, despite this constant contact, loneliness permeates our modern existence like a fog. In crowded rooms, in bustling cities, in virtual spaces teeming with activity, we feel unseen, unanchored. This is not the loneliness of physical isolation, but the more disorienting loneliness of emotional disconnection. We are not truly with others, nor are we truly with ourselves. We exist in between, always stimulated, never still. The temptation, of course, is to cure this feeling by seeking more of the same. More contact, more communication, more presence from others. We fill our calendars, join new groups, scroll endlessly through the highlight reels of others' lives. We seek company not as a celebration of life, but as an escape from our own inner silence. But this craving is not a cure, it is a symptom. It reveals the deep misunderstanding we carry, that the answer to loneliness lies outside of us. The Stoics knew better. They saw what we often refuse to admit. The ache we feel in solitude is not caused by absence, it is caused by dependence. Seneca, writing to a friend during a time of self-imposed exile, observed, "A man who is everywhere is nowhere. His words are as relevant now as they were 2,000 years ago." In our frantic effort to be present in everyone else's life, we forget to be present in our own. We scatter ourselves across conversations, screens, and schedules, hoping that if we're involved enough, liked enough, seen enough, we will finally feel secure. But this is an illusion. True peace does not multiply with proximity to others. It begins the moment we stop running from ourselves. What the Stoics understood is that inner peace is a craft, not a consequence. It is something you build deliberately, often in solitude, through honest reflection and the disciplined stripping away of illusions. External company, friends, lovers, colleagues, followers can enrich your life, but they cannot complete it. If your happiness is contingent on the presence or approval of others, then your peace is not truly your own. It belongs to them. And what can be taken from you was never really yours to begin with. We often confuse being alone with being unloved or unworthy, but to be alone is not to be abandoned. To be alone is to be undistracted. It is to be free of the roles we play in the theater of social life. It is in solitude that our truest questions rise to the surface. unfiltered, uncomfortable, unavoidable. Who am I without applause, without conversation, without the safety net of someone else's attention? Most people never ask these questions because they are always surrounded, and when they do find themselves alone, they reach for anything: music, news, messages, noise, anything to silence the silence. But the Stoics leaned into that silence. They revered it. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, turned inward each night with his journal, not to perform for history, but to confront his own soul. He wrote of virtue, of reason, of transience and temperance. He reminded himself daily that the world's judgments are fleeting and that the only lasting peace is the one cultivated within. He ruled millions, yet he knew that the hardest dominion is the self. He understood that power over others means nothing if you are a stranger to your own heart. To build inner peace, you must be willing to face the discomfort of solitude. You must be willing to feel the emptiness without immediately trying to fill it. You must sit with your thoughts long enough to understand them, without numbing, without fleeing. Only then can you begin to untangle which needs are real and which are learned, which desires come from within and which are implanted by a world that profits from your dissatisfaction. When you learn to enjoy your own company, not out of arrogance but out of clarity, you become powerful in a quiet, unshakable way. You are no longer ruled by the presence or absence of others. You are no longer destabilized by being left out, overlooked, or misunderstood. You stop trying to prove yourself and start being yourself. This is not isolation, this is self-possession. And from this grounded place, your relationships transform. You no longer enter them to be completed, you enter them to connect, to share, to enrich, not out of need but out of abundance. This is the paradox the modern world resists. The less you need people, the more fully you can love them. When your identity is not entangled with validation, you listen more, you give more freely, you forgive more quickly. You no longer take things personally because you are not always taking things as proof of your worth. You show up not as someone seeking attention, but as someone offering presence. But to reach this state, you must pass through solitude, not as punishment, but as purification. Loneliness is the fire that burns away false attachments. It reveals the ways we have neglected our inner lives. It asks us again and again, can you be enough? Without applause, without mirrors, without noise. If the answer is no, then your peace is still conditional. And the Stoics would say, begin there. Begin in the silence. Begin with the discomfort. Sit long enough to witness the storm within. And you will find that, beneath it all, there is a stillness that cannot be taken, a peace that does not depend, a strength that needs no audience. External company may be sweet, but it is not salvation. Your true refuge lies within. And once you build that inner sanctuary, the world may come and go, but you remain steady, rooted, free. Step 3. Solitude sharpens the soul. Marcus Aurelius ruled the greatest empire of his time. Armies obeyed his commands, senators feared his judgment. The fate of millions rested in his hands. And yet, in the quiet moments between wars and decrees, he turned inward, not outward, for strength. In his meditations he wrote, "Nowhere can a man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." Think about that. Of all the places he could go, his royal chambers, his gardens, his council chambers, he chose the one sanctuary that could never be taken from him, the retreat within. Solitude, for Marcus and the other Stoics, was not a punishment or a void. It was a sacred forge, a training ground, a quiet, sacred space in which the soul is not just examined, but honed. Solitude was not something to escape from, but something to step into, intentionally, reverently, and regularly. The modern world, filled with unceasing noise and constant stimulation, has forgotten this truth. We think silence means something is wrong. We think time alone is a void to be filled. But the Stoics believed the opposite, that it is only in silence that something essential emerges, something real. You see, the noise of life creates a fog around the soul. In the bustle of social interactions, we wear masks. We perform, we adjust, we compromise. We get pulled into the currents of opinion, expectation, and comparison. Even our thoughts stop being our own. They become echoes of the world around us. But in solitude, that fog begins to clear. The performative self dissolves. The curated identity unravels. The noise drops away. And what remains? The truth. The raw, unvarnished core of who we are. This is the solitude that the Stoics sought. Not loneliness, not boredom, not isolation, but stillness. Stillness that allows the mind to settle, like stirred water calming into clarity. Stillness that reveals the structure of our thoughts, the architecture of our beliefs. Stillness that offers no place to hide from our own contradictions, our fears, our wounds, and yet offers the tools to face them. In solitude, reflection becomes possible. You begin to examine your day, your choices, your assumptions. Were you kind when you could have been cruel? Did you act out of reason or impulse? Did you stand by your values or did you trade them for momentary gain? These aren't questions the crowd can answer for you. These are questions only silence can hold long enough for the answers to rise. And it's not just about awareness, it's about preparation. Life is not gentle. You will be criticized, misunderstood, betrayed, challenged. If your peace depends on external calm, you will always be a victim of circumstance. But if you have practiced calm in solitude, built it from within, you will be ready when the storm comes. This is what Marcus did, night after night, writing to himself in his journal. This is what Epictetus taught his students. To train the mind like a soldier trains his sword. And what sharpens the sword? Not noise, not the cheers of the crowd, but quiet, deliberate contact with the stone. Think of solitude as that stone. Every time you step away from the world and into silence, you are sharpening your blade. You are strengthening the edge of your mind and the integrity of your character. You are building the kind of inner stillness that doesn't break when tested. Because it will be tested. That is life. People will disappoint you. Dreams will fall apart. The world will shake your foundation. But if you have rooted yourself in solitude, if you've found that untroubled retreat within your own soul, you will bend, but not break. This sharpening doesn't require exotic rituals. It lives in the simple acts of conscious solitude. A morning without your phone, spent with a book that stretches your mind. An evening walk with only your thoughts in the sky. A few minutes of honest journaling, confronting what you did well and where you failed. A deep breath taken before reacting, reminding yourself of who you want to be. These are small acts, but repeated often, they become transformative. Over time, you begin to notice something subtle but profound. You stop reacting, you start responding. You listen more than you speak. You observe instead of judging. You become less attached to praise and less wounded by criticism. You stop chasing validation because you've begun validating yourself. And you don't just know what your values are, you live them. That is what solitude offers when embraced with intention. And the best part? You carry this sharpened soul back into the world. Solitude doesn't make you antisocial, it makes you better in every interaction. You bring depth to conversations, not just chatter. You offer presence, not performance. You inspire calm in others because they can sense the calm in you. You no longer walk into rooms wondering who will accept you. You walk in already whole. But this doesn't happen by accident. It happens by practice. And it requires courage, because sitting alone in a room with your thoughts is one of the hardest things to do. It's easier to scroll, to call, to distract, to perform. But if you can sit still, truly still, you will see things others never do. You will know yourself in a way most people avoid. And that self-acknowledge is power. Quiet, humble, unshakable power. So retreat. Not to escape the world, but to prepare for it. Not to isolate yourself, but to integrate yourself. To carve out time to think, to feel, to ask, to refine. To let solitude do its quiet work of sharpening you into someone who does not merely survive chaos, but someone who walks into it with grace, clarity, and strength. Because the soul, like any great tool, is only as effective as it is sharpened. And solitude is the stone. Step 4. Loneliness is the first step to freedom. In a world that glorifies external success, social validation, and connection, loneliness is often viewed as the enemy of happiness. The idea of being alone can stir up feelings of discomfort, insecurity, or even fear. We live in a culture where we're constantly reminded that our worth is tied to how many friends we have, how many followers we collect, or how much attention we can command. But the Stoics, with their quiet wisdom and unwavering discipline, saw things differently. To them, loneliness wasn't a curse. It was a path to liberation. It was a gateway to freedom. True freedom, as the Stoics understood it, wasn't about living without any restrictions. It wasn't about being able to do whatever you wanted whenever you wanted. Freedom wasn't the absence of rules or structures. It was the absence of need. It was the freedom from external forces, from the whims of others, from the fleeting desires that the world tells you should define you. It was the freedom to stand alone, to be at peace within yourself, regardless of what the world throws at you. This is the first step to true freedom, the ability to stand alone without the need for constant validation, social interaction, or companionship. In a world that pressures you to fit in, to belong, to be liked, this may sound like a radical, even unattainable idea. But the Stoics believe that true freedom comes not from being dependent on others, but from learning to be content with yourself. Alone, but not lonely. The Stoic philosopher Seneca captured this idea perfectly when he wrote, "No man is free who is not master of himself." What he meant was that true freedom isn't about escaping external constraints. It's about learning not to be enslaved by them. If you are dependent on others for your happiness, if your sense of self is defined by the approval or companionship of others, you are not free. You are bound by the expectations, desires, and judgments of the external world. But when you can be content with just yourself, when you don't rely on the validation, presence, or opinions of others to feel whole, you become unshakable. This is the essence of Stoic freedom, a kind of self-sufficiency that cannot be taken away. The first step in achieving this is embracing loneliness, not as a burden but as a teacher. We often fear being alone because it brings us face to face with our deepest insecurities, our fears, and our vulnerabilities. In the silence of solitude, we can no longer hide behind the distractions of social interaction or the noise of the world. But the Stoics knew that this is where the real work begins. If you can stand alone without feeling lost or anxious, if you can sit in your own company without desperately seeking someone else to fill the void, you've already begun to unlock a profound sense of inner freedom. Loneliness, when seen through this lens, is not the absence of others. It is the presence of yourself. It is the opportunity to dive deep into your own mind, to discover who you really are without the interference of the outside world. The Stoics did not fear this process. They embraced it. In fact, they believed that solitude was essential to understanding oneself and achieving true inner peace. They saw it as an opportunity to examine their thoughts, to reflect on their actions, and to align their behavior with their highest values. Imagine the power of living a life where you are no longer dependent on others to feel good about yourself. Imagine waking up each day not worried about how many people you'll connect with or how many likes your latest post will get, but instead knowing that you are enough, right where you are, in this moment. Imagine being free from the pressure to fit in, to perform, or to please. This is what the Stoics understood, that true freedom comes from not needing anyone or anything to complete you. The moment you realize that your worth is not tied to external approval, you unlock a kind of invulnerability, a freedom that allows you to navigate the world without being tossed around by its whims. This is the kind of independence that loneliness cultivates. When you stand alone in the quiet and examine your own thoughts, feelings, and desires, you learn something profound. You realize that you are not defined by the opinions or approval of others. Your sense of self is rooted in your own virtue, your own values, your own understanding of what is good and true. This is not arrogance. It is a deep, quiet confidence in your own integrity. It is the freedom that comes from knowing that no one else's judgments can touch you, because your worth is not up for debate. It is in this solitude that you come to understand one of the most radical truths of Stoic philosophy. You don't need anyone else to be happy. You don't need to be surrounded by people, seeking approval or validation to feel complete. You can be content in your own company. You can find peace in your own thoughts. And because of this, you become invulnerable. No matter what happens in the world, no matter what you lose, You are never truly alone because you have built an inner fortress that cannot be breached. This is the true freedom the Stoics taught. It is not a freedom from responsibility, but a freedom from dependency. It is the freedom to live according to your values, to make choices that align with your highest self, without being swayed by the crowd, by trends, or by external expectations. It is the freedom to be your own master, to answer only to your own conscience, not to the approval of others. And this, my friend, is what the Stoics understood, that loneliness is not the absence of connection. It is the first step toward the most profound connection you can have, the connection to your own soul. When you can stand alone, completely whole within yourself, you become truly free. You are no longer at the mercy of the world. You are the master of your own fate. In the end, loneliness is not something to avoid or fear. It is the first step to freedom. It is the path that leads to self-sufficiency, to inner peace, and to unshakable strength. When you can stand alone, you cannot be moved by anything the world throws at you. You are free. Step 5. Most people fear loneliness because they've never faced themselves. There's an uncomfortable truth that many of us avoid. We don't fear loneliness, we fear what we'll find when we're alone. In the constant noise of our daily lives, whether it's the buzz of notifications, the hum of the television, or the endless chatter of our social circles, we rarely have the chance to sit in silence with ourselves. And when we do, when the distractions are stripped away and we're left alone with our own thoughts, we begin to encounter the truths we've been running from. The fear of loneliness is often just a mask for a much deeper fear, the fear of facing our own inner world. In the stillness of solitude, we are confronted with our regrets, our insecurities, our unresolved pain, and our doubts. There's nowhere to hide, no distractions to numb the discomfort. The weight of the past, the worries about the future, the criticism we've internalized from others, they all rise to the surface, and it's terrifying. We realize that we've been so busy filling our lives with noise and interaction, trying to avoid being alone, that we've never truly faced ourselves. But here's the most important lesson the Stoics have to offer. The only way out is through. We cannot avoid these uncomfortable feelings forever. We cannot outrun our doubts, our mistakes, or the parts of ourselves we wish we could forget. The Stoic way is to face these truths head-on. It is through confronting our deepest fears and vulnerabilities that we can find freedom. Think of it like this. When we avoid loneliness, we are avoiding the work that needs to be done. When we surround ourselves with people, with distractions, with noise, we create a barrier between ourselves and our true selves. We never take the time to reflect, to question, to grow. It's only in those moments of solitude, those moments when there's no one else around, when the world is quiet, that we have the opportunity to face the raw material that we can begin to transform it. The Stoics believed that strength is born in solitude, not in avoidance. Marcus Aurelius, perhaps one of the most powerful men in history, wrote often about the importance of self-reflection and solitude in his personal journal, Meditations. Even in the midst of ruling an empire, he took time to reflect on his thoughts, his actions, and his place in the universe. He understood that if we do not take time to examine ourselves, we are like ships sailing without a rudder, subject to the whims of the wind, drifting aimlessly. When you are alone, the inner dialogue becomes impossible to ignore. You can no longer silence the thoughts that make you uncomfortable, but instead of running from them, the Stoics taught us to confront them directly. Every time a regret, a fear, or a doubt arises, ask yourself, is this true? Does this define me? Can I change it? For the Stoic, mastering loneliness isn't about escaping the discomfort, it's about learning from it. It's about challenging the stories we tell ourselves. The voice in your head that tells you you're not good enough, that you'll never succeed, that you're unworthy of love. Those are the stories you must rewrite, and the only way to do that is through reflection, through honesty with yourself, and through a commitment to improving who you are, one day at a time. In solitude, the battlefield is within. It's where the weak are broken, or where the wise are reborn. The Stoics didn't see solitude as a form of punishment or exile. They saw it as a training ground, a place to sharpen the mind, to strengthen the spirit, and to build the courage necessary to face the challenges of life. It's easy to be distracted, to seek solace in the company of others, to fill the silence with noise. But true growth comes from sitting in the silence long enough to face the truths we would rather ignore. This is why so many people fear loneliness. It forces them to confront themselves. But the Stoics understood that this is where the greatest opportunities for transformation lie. In that silence, the falsehoods we've told ourselves start to unravel. We begin to see ourselves not as the flawed, insecure beings we feared we were, but as human beings capable of growth. We start to see our mistakes not as failures, but as lessons, necessary steps in the process of becoming who we are meant to be. If we can sit in the discomfort of our own minds long enough to reflect, to see ourselves clearly without judgment or distortion, then we can begin to take control. We can choose to let go of the stories that no longer serve us. We can choose to forgive ourselves for past mistakes, to accept our imperfections, and to move forward with renewed strength. The Stoics were masters of this process. They didn't fear the silence. They welcomed it as an opportunity to strengthen their resolve, to sharpen their character, and to embrace the discomfort of self-examination. It was through this process of facing themselves, of confronting their darkest thoughts and fears, that they cultivated a deep sense of inner peace and strength. When you sit with yourself in the silence of loneliness, you are not just enduring discomfort, you are building resilience. You are developing the strength to face the world, not as a passive observer, but as a fully engaged participant who is not afraid of the inner challenges that life throws at you. The more you face these inner battles, the more unshakable you become. And so, loneliness, in the Stoic sense, is not something to run from. It's an opportunity to reclaim your power. It's an opportunity to rewrite the stories that have held you back. It's the first step toward freedom, not just from the distractions of the world, but from the self-imposed limitations we place on ourselves. Step 6. Use loneliness as a forge, not a cage. Imagine loneliness not as a burden to carry or a state to escape, but as a forge. A powerful tool that can remake you, reform you, and transform you. The forge doesn't just reshape raw metal, it purifies it, strengthens it, and makes it into something new and useful. The Stoics understood that solitude and loneliness, though uncomfortable, could serve a similar purpose. It's not something to fear or avoid, but a space to develop strength and clarity. In our modern world, loneliness is often seen as a curse, a sign of inadequacy or failure. We fill our lives with constant distractions, whether it's social media, television, or endless streams of notifications, all to avoid the discomfort that comes with silence and solitude. We've been conditioned to see solitude as the absence of something, rather than the presence of something vital, but the Stoics saw loneliness and isolation in an entirely different light. For them, it wasn't a void, it was a vessel for growth, a sacred space where they could cultivate wisdom and inner peace. The Stoics didn't retreat into solitude as a form of escape from the world, they retreated to engage more deeply with it. Their isolation wasn't a form of hiding, it was a form of preparation. Solitude wasn't about avoiding life's challenges, but about developing the inner resources needed to face them with strength and clarity. Seneca, one of the most prominent Stoic philosophers, often spoke about the importance of self-reflection. He recommended journaling, not as a form of catharsis, but as a means of engaging in rigorous self-examination. When you spend time alone, it's like having a mirror that reflects back your true self, without the filters of social expectations or external approval. The Stoics used this time to meditate, to question their values, and to wrestle with their thoughts. They would examine their emotions and their reactions to events, not to suppress them, but to understand them. Marcus Aurelius, perhaps the most well-known Stoic figure, spent time in solitude throughout his reign as Roman emperor, but not in a way that distanced him from the world. Instead, he used his solitary moments to reflect on life's greater truths and his role in the universe. His meditations, written during his campaigns as an emperor, were his reflections on how to live virtuously and harmoniously with nature. He didn't see his solitary moments as a time to escape from the world, but as a time to strengthen his soul and sharpen his mind. This is how the Stoics approached loneliness, not as something to run from or something that made them weak, but as a powerful tool to refine and improve themselves. The metaphor of the forge is apt, because solitude, like a blacksmith's forge, can be intense, challenging, and at times uncomfortable. The heat of the forge can melt the metal, reshaping it completely, just as the heat of solitude can melt the false layers of our identities. The ones built on social expectations, external validation, and the need for approval. Solitude exposes us to the rawness of who we really are, and like the blacksmith who tempers the metal with skill and care, we must use the time in solitude to temper our minds, our spirits, and our lives. But unlike the metal that's worked without choice, we have a choice in how we respond to the heat of loneliness. We can allow it to break us down, or we can use it as an opportunity to rebuild ourselves into something stronger, more resilient, and more focused. Just like the blacksmith works with fire, we must learn to lean into the discomfort of solitude rather than shy away from it. Seneca said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Solitude is the perfect training ground for this mastery. In the stillness of solitude, you're left with only yourself. There are no distractions, no external demands, and no noise to drown out your thoughts. You're forced to face your true self, your fears, your insecurities, your mistakes, and your desires. This confrontation can be painful. It's far easier to be distracted by the noise of the world than to sit with the discomfort of being alone with your thoughts. But true transformation doesn't happen when we avoid discomfort. It happens when we confront it head-on, like a blacksmith shaping a blade with careful, deliberate strokes. In solitude, you have the chance to question everything you thought you knew about yourself. You can reflect on your goals, your values, and the choices you've made. What are the things you fear? Why do you feel so anxious when left alone? What are you trying to avoid? Solitude offers the space to explore these questions and more. As you face these challenges, you become more aware of your mental and emotional patterns, which allows you to begin transforming them. Epictetus famously said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." Solitude strips away the external distractions, revealing what you truly need and value. When you face the loneliness of solitude, you also face the reality that you don't need constant companionship or external validation to feel whole. True freedom comes when you can stand alone, secure in your own worth, without the need for approval from others. This process of self-discovery and self-reflection is a powerful tool for transformation. Instead of seeing loneliness as a cage, view it as a workshop where your inner life can be sharpened, polished, and perfected. The Stoics didn't fear the quiet of solitude. They embraced it as a necessary process for honing their inner strength and wisdom. Instead of asking, "How do I stop being lonely?" a question that assumes loneliness is something wrong that needs fixing, ask yourself, "What can I become through this solitude?" This shift in perspective changes everything. The question no longer assumes that loneliness is a weakness to overcome, but rather a challenge to rise to. Solitude isn't just a passive waiting period. It's an active process of growth. In moments of loneliness, you have the chance to remake yourself. You can rewrite the story of who you are and what you stand for. The people around you may never truly know the depth of your struggles or your journey, but in the silence of solitude, you can reclaim your power. The Stoics knew that it was in these quiet moments that the seeds of wisdom, courage, and virtue could be planted. This is why solitude was sacred to the Stoics. They understood that to live in alignment with nature, to achieve a life of virtue, and to build an unshakable inner peace, one must spend time alone, reflecting, refining, and strengthening the soul. They didn't use solitude to hide from the world. They used it to prepare themselves for whatever the world might throw at them. Loneliness can either break you or transform you. It's all in how you approach it. The forge is a place of transformation, where raw materials are reshaped into something stronger. The cage, on the other hand, traps you in your fears and insecurities. Solitude is a tool, not a punishment. It's a space where you can learn, grow, and remake yourself into someone better. As you sit in solitude, think of yourself as the blacksmith working with the material of your soul. The forge may be hot, the work may be hard, and the process may feel uncomfortable at times, but through it you can shape yourself into a stronger, more resilient person. Loneliness is the beginning of your transformation. Step 7. Loneliness awakens the logos within. In the vast, churning noise of modern life, where every moment seems to demand a response, a post, a comment, or a scroll, the idea of sitting still in silence, utter silence, is almost alien. We run from it. We cover it up with noise, with people, with media, with movement. We say we fear being alone, but the truth is far deeper and more confronting. We fear what solitude reveals. We fear the mirror that loneliness holds up to our soul. And yet, to the Stoics, those ancient warriors of wisdom, this very fear marked the beginning of something sacred. Because in their eyes, true solitude was not a punishment, nor a prison. It was a portal, a gateway to the divine spark that resides within every person, a way back to the Logos. The Logos, in Stoic philosophy, is the rational principle that permeates all of nature. It is the order, the structure, the divine intelligence that governs the universe. It is the reason behind the seasons, the wisdom in the wind, the justice behind cause and effect. But the Stoics did not believe this divine reason lived only in the stars or the gods. They believed it lived inside you. Deep beneath the layers of distraction, social identity, personal ambition, and fear, there is a quiet flame, a fragment of the Logos, present in every soul. But like an ember buried under ash, it is not easily visible. It is not loud. It doesn't scream for your attention. And so, in the noisy marketplace of life, it is often forgotten. That is where loneliness enters, not as a flaw, but as a force. In true solitude, stripped of the noise, free of the crowds, disconnected from the endless feedback loops of modern communication, we begin to feel something different. At first, it may feel like emptiness, like falling into a void. But if we resist the urge to escape, if we sit long enough in that quiet space, something ancient and powerful begins to stir within us. The Logos, which had been drowned out by the chatter of daily life, starts to whisper, not in words, but in insights, not in volume, but in clarity. And suddenly we begin to remember truths we forgot we knew, that our worth is not determined by likes or status, that our purpose is not defined by trends, that our soul does not crave approval, it craves alignment. This is why Marcus Aurelius, who ruled over the most powerful empire of his time, still turned inward every day. In the midst of war, political betrayal, and the pressure of leading millions, he found peace not in palaces, but in solitude. Nowhere can a man find a more peaceful and untroubled retreat than in his own soul, he wrote. And that retreat was not escapism, it was his anchor, because in that silence, the Logos would meet him. It would remind him that even emperors are dust in time, that virtue is more enduring than legacy, that what matters most is not the external empire you build, but the internal character you cultivate. To awaken the Logos is to stop reacting and start reflecting. It is to slow down long enough to question your motives, to realign your actions with your values, and to see the world not through the lens of desire, but of wisdom. And this awakening rarely happens in the noise of company. It happens in the quiet trials of being alone. It is in loneliness that you are confronted with your weaknesses, but also with your possibility. It is in solitude that your fears rise, but so does your courage. It is there that you stop being a performer on the stage of society and start becoming the author of your own character. Modern life has conditioned us to believe that being alone means being broken. But the Stoics knew better. They saw that loneliness, if endured with presence and honesty, could become the crucible of greatness. Because when you are no longer propped up by praise or performance, you discover what actually holds you up. And if it is nothing but ego and craving, then the silence will feel unbearable. But if you allow that silence to burn away the false parts of you, you will emerge with something unshakable: integrity, clarity, resilience. You will begin to walk not in confusion, but in purpose, not in reaction, but in response to the Logos. This is not philosophy for comfort. This is philosophy for transformation. Loneliness does not flatter you, it challenges you. It does not entertain you, it enlightens you. And when you surrender to it, when you meet yourself in the center of that sacred quiet, you will begin to see life not as chaos to be controlled, but as harmony to be lived with. You will no longer chase after every noise or approval, because you will have touched the one thing that cannot be taken from you, your inner order, your divine reason, your Logos. So the next time loneliness comes to visit, don't run, sit with it. Ask it what it has come to show you, and then listen not with fear, but with reverence. Because in that moment, you are not being abandoned by the world, you are being reunited with yourself. And in that reunion, the Logos will speak, and what it says may just change everything. Step 8. Connection means nothing without integrity. The Stoics, despite their teachings on solitude and inner peace, never believed that human connection was unnecessary or unimportant. On the contrary, they recognized the value of community, friendship, and even romantic love. However, their deep understanding of the human condition allowed them to see the darker side of these connections, when they are driven by neediness, dependence, or a lack of self-awareness. The Stoics taught that true connection, whether through friendship, love, or even community, is only meaningful when it is built on a foundation of integrity. This is where their philosophy diverged from the modern worldview. Today, many people seek connection out of loneliness, out of a fear of being alone, or out of a desire for validation. The Stoics would argue that genuine connection isn't about needing others, but about offering yourself freely, without the desperate pull of neediness. The Stoics believe that love and friendship, when they come from a place of independence, rather than dependency, are the most pure and lasting forms of human interaction. Marcus Aurelius famously said, "When you have the ability to love, do it for your own sake." This idea of love and friendship being a gift, rather than a need, allows the individual to give freely. Without the expectation of something in return, the connection you offer is genuine, rooted in the strength and integrity of your own character, not in what you hope to gain from it. When you are secure in yourself, love no longer feels like a transaction. It becomes an expression of who you are. Friendship, too, is no longer an attempt to fill a void, but a true sharing of mutual respect, understanding, and care. You don't rely on others for validation or approval because you've already found that within yourself. You don't seek friendships or relationships to avoid loneliness. Instead, you engage with others to celebrate life's shared experiences, knowing that your peace of mind and sense of self-worth are not dependent on anyone else. In our modern world, the desire for attention, validation, and popularity has become all-consuming. People, especially in the age of social media, are constantly looking for ways to measure their worth by the number of likes, comments, and followers they have. The Stoics would see this as a dangerous trap. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." When you crave validation from external sources, you lose the power to define your own worth. You allow others to shape your identity, leaving you vulnerable to manipulation and disappointment. In a society driven by external recognition, it's easy to lose sight of what truly matters: virtue. For the Stoics, virtue was the ultimate measure of a person's worth. Not fame, not popularity, not approval from others. When we seek connection purely for the sake of validation, we reduce ourselves to mere vessels for the opinions of others. True connection, on the other hand, comes from living authentically, acting with integrity, and offering genuine care without the expectation of anything in return. The key to building these meaningful, authentic relationships lies in mastering solitude. When you have spent time alone, cultivating your inner peace, understanding your values, and strengthening your character, you no longer need others to define who you are. You can connect with people from a place of strength, not weakness. Loneliness, rather than being something to avoid, becomes the foundation for building stronger, more fulfilling relationships. Imagine a relationship where both parties are not coming together out of need, but because they choose to share their lives and their time with each other. There is no clinging, no manipulation, no desperation for approval. Each person enters the relationship with a sense of fullness, offering love, attention, and care because they want to, not because they feel they need to fill a void. This is the type of connection the Stoics valued, a connection built on mutual respect and individual integrity. One of the most profound shifts that loneliness teaches is the ability to be love rather than to beg for it. When you are secure in your own solitude, when you have developed your own sense of self-worth and inner peace, love no longer becomes something you need from others to feel whole. You can offer love from a place of overflow, a love that is freely given, without conditions, without expectation. Too often, relationships become an exchange where one person is constantly seeking validation, approval, or attention. The Stoics would argue that this type of connection is fundamentally unbalanced and unsustainable. True love is not transactional, it's transformational. It begins with you in the quiet moments of solitude when you discover your own capacity to love, to be present, and to offer yourself fully. From that foundation, you can build relationships that are rooted in authenticity and integrity. To the Stoics, integrity was the cornerstone of any meaningful relationship. Integrity is the alignment of your inner values with your outward actions. It means acting from a place of authenticity rather than from a place of social manipulation. Integrity is what allows you to show up in your relationships fully, without pretending to be someone you're not or hiding behind masks. It's what allows you to be truly present with others, whether in love, friendship, or community, without the anxiety of trying to impress, to win approval, or to avoid conflict. When you live in alignment with your values, when you embrace your own worth, you will naturally attract relationships that are based on mutual respect and authenticity. You stop needing others to validate your existence, and instead, you attract people who appreciate you for who you truly are. This is the essence of connection, real, meaningful, and free from the chains of dependency. Ultimately, the Stoic vision of connection is not one of dependency or attachment, but one of freedom and strength. It is about cultivating relationships that are rooted in mutual respect, authenticity, and integrity. By first mastering solitude, by learning to stand on your own and to live with inner peace, you free yourself from the fear of loneliness and the trap of needing others to complete you. Instead, you can offer the world a love that is not grasping but generous, not dependent but empowered. True connection is not about filling a void, but about sharing your wholeness with others. It is a connection that transcends dependency, a connection that is built on the firm foundation of your own self-respect and integrity. The Stoics understood that to truly connect with others, you must first learn to connect with yourself. And in doing so, you unlock the deepest, most meaningful connections with the world around you. So here's the truth. Loneliness isn't a punishment. It's not a curse, a flaw, or something to avoid at all costs. Loneliness is not a mark of failure or a sign of weakness. It's an invitation, an initiation into a deeper version of yourself that most people will never meet. The Stoics, with their profound understanding of the human condition, never viewed solitude as a punishment, but as a sacred space. It is a space where the noise of the world dies down, where the distractions of everyday life fall away, and where the ego dissolves. In that silence, truth rises. It is in the quiet that you can hear the whispers of your soul, calling you toward growth, wisdom, and self-mastery. When you feel the ache of loneliness, it's not a sign of something being wrong with you. It's a sign of readiness. You're being called to a place where most people refuse to go, a place that is uncomfortable, unfamiliar, and deeply challenging, a place where you are invited to look inward and confront the things you've been avoiding. It is in this space of solitude that transformation begins. It's where your greatest growth happens, where your deepest insights emerge, and where you are given the rare opportunity to truly understand who you are. The Stoics understood that solitude is not a void. It's a fertile ground for self-discovery. It is in these moments of aloneness that we are confronted with our truest selves. There is no place to hide, no distractions to keep us from seeing who we really are. You can't run from your thoughts, your fears, or your insecurities in solitude. You must face them head-on, acknowledge them, and learn from them. This is not something to fear. Rather, it is the pathway to wisdom. Solitude and loneliness are often mistaken as forms of isolation or punishment. In truth, they are forms of invitation, a call to be more than you have been, to grow beyond your previous limitations. The Stoics saw solitude as a tool for personal development. When you sit alone, when the noise of the world falls silent, you have the chance to truly know yourself. This is where clarity is born. It's in the stillness that you can shed the roles you've been playing and stop pretending to be someone you're not. There's no one to impress in solitude. It's just you, with your thoughts, your values, your imperfections, and your potential. When you feel alone, instead of seeing it as a negative, see it as an opportunity. It's the chance to peel back the layers that have accumulated over the years, to get to the core of who you really are, and to start building the life you were meant to live. This is the space where you can clear away everything that is not truly you. The distractions, the expectations, the judgments of others, they all fall away in solitude. What remains is your true self, waiting to be acknowledged and nurtured. If you're feeling alone right now, good. That's the first step toward discovering a deeper, more resilient version of yourself. Loneliness doesn't have to be a battle. It's an opportunity to stop running, to stop seeking distractions, and to start looking inward. In our fast-paced world, we are constantly running away from silence, from solitude, from ourselves. We are always seeking the next distraction, the next message, the next interaction, the next thing to fill the empty spaces in our lives. But what if those empty spaces are not something to be afraid of? What if those moments of quiet are exactly what you need to become who you are meant to be? It's in these moments of aloneness that you have the power to redefine yourself. You don't need anyone's approval, anyone's validation, or anyone's attention to be whole. You already are. And the more you can sit with that truth, the more you can embrace the loneliness, the more you will discover about who you truly are, what you truly want, and what you truly need. Solitude isn't something to fear, it's something to embrace as an essential part of your journey. The Stoics didn't teach that you should run from loneliness. They taught that you should embrace it. You should embrace it not because it's easy or comfortable, but because it is the gateway to your greatest potential. When you face loneliness head-on, without fear or resistance, you discover the incredible power within you. You discover the strength that comes from within, not from others, not from relationships, and not from external circumstances. Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." The more you sit with your loneliness and allow it to transform you, the less you will fear it, and the more you will realize that it is not your enemy, but your teacher. In mastering solitude, you become the kind of person who can walk through the world unshaken, not because you've never been alone, but because you've learned to be whole on your own. You've learned to stand on your own 2 feet, to be at peace with yourself, and to offer your best self to the world. True strength doesn't come from relying on others for comfort or companionship. It comes from self-reliance and the ability to be content with your own company. When you are at peace with yourself, the world can throw anything at you and you will stand tall. So if loneliness is calling to you right now, see it for what it truly is, an opportunity to become something greater than you've ever been. It's not a void to be feared, but a pathway to personal freedom. It's a sacred space where your mind can become sharp, your heart can become strong, and your spirit can find peace. The Stoics understood that the ability to be comfortable alone was one of the highest forms of mastery. It's not about avoiding the feeling of loneliness. It's about understanding it, embracing it, and using it as a tool for growth. You are ready to stop running from the discomfort, ready to look inward and confront the parts of you that need attention, ready to become the kind of person who doesn't fear the quiet moments, who doesn't feel threatened by solitude, and who doesn't need others to feel whole. This is the path to true freedom. Not freedom from loneliness, but freedom to be whole on your own, free from the need for external validation. In mastering loneliness, you gain the ultimate freedom, the freedom to be your authentic self, unshaken, unwavering, and unafraid of what the world may throw at you. So, take the step. Embrace the loneliness, embrace the silence, and in doing so, you'll unlock a power that only a few ever truly experience, the power to be complete on your own terms. You don't need anyone's approval. You don't need constant company. You don't need validation. You only need to trust that you are already whole. And when you discover that, the world around you will begin to reflect the strength, peace, and wisdom you've cultivated within yourself.